Hello, and this is the Warpforge with yes, it's a progress video, a progress video on a friend's custom Librarian for his custom Iron Hands successor chapter, which turned Renegade, if I remember correctly, in his background, called the Iron Serpents. So, I'll just be straightforward to the plot and take it away. With more natural light, hopefully we should be getting better looks on the colour. As we see here, he has a shield, storm shield, with the icon of his serpent, as we see here. As we see here, here's his force weapon, or whatever you call it. Yes, it is a Necron war scythe. It's due to apparently one battle or meeting up with the Necrons, and in exchange for planets they get techie gear. So apparently this Librarian has a war scythe. How I used it, you wanted a force weapony look to it, like how Games Workshop does it. Unfortunately, I'm not quite up to the standard of Games Workshop, but alas, there we go. So the weapon, I decided to paint steel, or with the gunmetal silver, I think it's called, from Vigello, and then decided to give it 2 washes of electric blue from paint from Vigello. And then on some of the main access lines, and with a pin I can show you. Oh, hello, sorry. I need to put my Warpsmith out the way, otherwise it's going to get broken. As you see here, where the pin is showing, here I used just a basic paint coat. Nothing fancy, just a fine line of electric blue. I then decided to dry brush in certain areas, skull white, or the pure white paint from Vigello, just the purest white you can get, and also highlight it in some places like here, as the pin suggests, and here. With the staff here, I washed with electric blue to give it a glowy effect, and also slightly aged. If we move this up, I don't like how it's slightly lagging, but I'll have to check. If we see it very carefully, I've given it a little bit of wash of blue to give it more of a glowy effect. And at the back was just a straightforward bronze paint with a gold, bronze base coat with a gold base coat for the little ball end joint on the end. The little ripper is not supposed to be a ripper, apparently. It is a little familiar gribbly thing, Xeno thing. That is the mascot for his successor chapter, supposedly. How I did him was, I basically used rotten flesh from Games Workshop. I then, give me a few seconds. Sorry, the wind was opening my door. I then washed it down with purple. I gave it from Warlock Purple, or no, Leviathan Purple from Games Workshop washes. I then dry brush rotten flesh again. I then put a dark green from Vigello, or Dark Angels green is the roughly equivalent to Games Workshop paints, onto the model, and then dry brushed it slightly with skull white, and then highlighted the teeth as seen here with skull white. I then, with the carapace, just painted it, base coated it Dark Angels green, then dry brushed a lighter green, I think it's called Camel Green from Games Workshop, if I'm correct. So I did that, and then I added, I'm not sure if I've already said it, but like I said, a Dark Angels green over the flesh. For the eye, it was just a basic scarlet red from Games Workshop with a highlight for the pupil of pure white from Vigello or Skull White from Games Workshop. They're both round about the same. With the tongue, I used Corn Red for main base coat. I then sort of did a very, 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 very light dry brush of Scarlet Red, and then a highlight of Wazdaka Red for on the side of the tongues to highlight the tongue a bit. Better look would be at him. Better look, as this would suggest, dark. Well, it's darker on the inside than the outside. The Crux Terminatus, I'm very proud of this. I like this out of the whole of the model. Gunmetal for a base coat, and then highlighted, or sort of a dry brush, but it's not hard, of a lighter silver, Plata Silver from Vigello. It's the equivalent of Mithril Silver from Games Workshop paints. The shield was basically similar long, and the shoulder pads were of similar long side the Gribbly thing, the Gribbly Familiar. It was basically base coat of rotten flesh, wash of brown, scorched brown paint from Games Workshop. I then dry brushed another layer of rotten flesh and then dry brushed Skull White on the model. My friend said he wanted the scales on the inside of the serpent to be fine, to leave it as it is, so I did. Base coat the green section of Dark Angel's green, and then the spikes were just hammered copper from Vigello with Mithril Silver highlights for the tips of them. The helmet, at least proud of, I'm going to say. I was trying to go for a pure white, but have something to give it more depth. I think I was a bit reckless and rushed it with it, but I rescued it with the helpful hints of dry brushing. Basically, I base coated it white. I then washed it down with black to try and seep into the crevices. Unfortunately, this turned a little bit grey, so I made 2 or 3 dry brushes of Skull White. For the eyes was just Corn Red with a little bit of highlight of Skull White here. If I can turn the model around, it's very hard because there's a guy, well, he's looking upwards, and it's quite hard to show the model when the gravel is still drying. If this will focus, yes, here, the little eagle thing, I basically gunmetal base coated it with a highlight of the Mithril Silver. Gunmetal silver is roughly equivalent to bulk gunmetal in Games Workshop paints as well. The main body, the green was basically many things. It was Dark Angel's green base coat. It was then washed with a darker green from Vigello. I then dry brushed camel green on it, washed it down again with Dark Angel's green, then washed it again to bring it back up with Scorpion green or Electric green, I think it's called in Vigello. I'm not that too sure. The bronze bits were just simple base coats of bronze work anyway. It was hammered copper from Vigello with highlights of Mithril Silver because the two colours contrast in my opinion and it makes a nice model. The buttons here, the buttons here and here were just simple yellows and reds, any colour. Apart from that, those rosettes, which are a basic need, but they serve fine. It's basically, for the red bit, it was Corn Red then scarlet red on top of that. For painting, it was just 2 basic base coats, and then 1 basic base coat of rotten flesh for the end bit, the paper bit of the rosette. As you can well, you can't really see that well, but on his leg, behind the shield here, it's another rosette painted the same. The grills were of basic on the back, with the skull were basic gunmetal, silver, and then each edge, I'm going to call it, or grill, was then highlighted with mithril silver, and the tip of the skull here, was painted with mithril silver. The 2 red dots were just a basic scarlet red from Games Workshop. And that's my friend's Librarian. The gold was, before I forget, the gold was of shining gold from Vigello, here, here, and here. And the red bit inside was just scarlet red with a highlight in the centre of skull white. And that is how I paint my friend's Librarian. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more hobby progression videos of me and my friend's minis that my friend wants me to paint, then please just give it a like and a subscribe. And if you've got any more comments down below, send us any feedback of this model. This is the Warp Forge, signing out, and remember, keep on forging.